What is up, guys? My name's Shawn, and welcome to the How to Hero YouTube channel, where it's my job to awaken the hero within you. There's a hero within all of us. I get a lot of questions about this particular topic: indigos, star seeds, light workers, crystal children, rainbow children, different, I guess, concepts about the different types of souls, or the different types of people and the different abilities that they might have, that type of thing. And so what I wanted to do was just give a perspective that came through from my guides, because I got the question so many times that I just basically asked for some guidance and what kind of messaging would be best to deliver at this time for the collective. And so I guess the first thing I want to start out by saying is that we're in the midst of an evolutionary process right now. So we're in the midst of the human race shifting into more of a vibrational existence. And so in order for us to facilitate that shift, we need to have individuals that are more tuned to the vibrational energy of the universe. The energetic environment needs to be, people need to be more sensitive to it because it's subtle. And so when we're in our dense dense bodies, we need to have systems there, and we need to have sort of capacity to deal with the energy. Initially, the way that it started was through the indigos. And the indigos, like myself, I'm a good example of an indigo. So I'll just talk a little bit about my experience. And essentially we have, not all of us, and it's not like, there are nuances there. Everybody's unique. There's different experiences to be had and things like that. But essentially what it is a person who's, it's a soul who's come in to this body, but the body is, at pre-incarnation, is tuned in a certain way in order to facilitate the sort of vibrational sensitivity that I was talking about earlier. So indigos come in to their incarnation more sensitive than a normal body, and typically indigos are the parents of the crystal children and the rainbow children, but not always. But this is a sort of evolutionary thing that's taking place. An indigo, the reason they're called indigo is because their aura appears to be the indigo color. They're working from the indigo ray, which is the mental ray. So they tend to be intelligent, whether they're outwardly intelligent or not. They can be more introspective in that sense, but they also tend to be very strong-willed. They don't tend to accept authority easily. Like if you try to maintain authority over an indigo, typically you're going to have to somehow show that you deserve to have the authority. They don't tend to recognize things like badges or uniforms as a identification of an authority figure. They choose the authority figure based on the merit of the person, of their assessment of the person. And because they're so sensitive, their assessments can happen very quickly. And a lot of times, especially when they're growing up, it happens like subconsciously. And because they're more in their mental state, and they tend to be intelligent, they tend to be bored by normal things that they learn in school, right? The whole school system tends to not be great for them. It all depends on how they're raised. It depends on all these different factors. So I'm not saying that this is true for every single indigo or whatever, but they tend to be bored. They tend to like kind of daydream, and they tend to withdraw from their environment when they're in the learning environment in schools, because they're bored. They're not being engaged, and they can sense that the information that they're learning and that the methodology of learning is not really very useful. There's not a lot about our modern school system and education system that is useful, and that's just unfortunately that's the system that we're in right now. And so indigos are sort of adverse to these archaic systems, just by the nature of them. And so they're also averse to archaic authority hierarchies and different, the idea that just because somebody is told to you that they're your teacher, now you must treat them with these certain sort of respect. And it's not even actually respect, it's like a false respect, right? Like if the teacher says something, they must be correct. Those types of behaviors where a regular person would just kind of go with the flow because the teacher says to do this or that, and they just do that. And Indigo is more like more of a rebel, but they do it, whether consciously or not, they're doing it because they understand innately that they're sovereign beings and that they don't really require the guidance that this teacher is giving, or they can identify that this guidance is somehow mismanaged or misdirected, or there's some sort of thing going on there. And typically our indigo, when indigos have kids, not typically necessarily, but often they'll be rainbow or crystal children. And these children are more wide open. So the indigo ray, like when an indigo comes into incarnation, they still have these sort of energetic protections in their auric field. So they have, they weren't ready to be fully wide open and unconditionally accepting of all. In the environment in which they grew up, it was too tumultuous still for them to be that open. They were too sensitive. They would be too sensitive. And so the indigos were some of the generation that really started to shift things and started to really promote unity, so that the next wave of incoming incarnations of souls coming in as crystals or rainbow children are, they're more sensitive even, so by default, and they're more open and more vulnerable to attack on their energy. And so the reason that they're referred to as crystal or rainbow is because they have the spectrum of their auric field open, which can appear to be a crystalline. It's a crystalline auric field already. So they don't have to, they're already open, they're already in flow, they're already sort of flowing with consciousness. They're not easily wrapped up in the past or the future. They're more innately just present, whereas the indigo is not necessarily that present. That's something that they tend to have to work on. They tend to have to work on being present. It tends to be a practice that they need to work on, and then the auric fields reflect that capacity for their status. And I wanted to talk a bit about how that relates to starseeds and light workers as well. Essentially, to be an indigo, you don't have to be a starseed, but you could be. The starseed concept is something that comes from the idea that the soul that inhabits the physical body, the soul that comes in, is a fragment of a soul that had its origins in different planetary systems, different star systems. A lot of indigos, I think, are probably from they have spent time in Pleiades. And the only reason I say this is just based on my observation of people and things like that. I have no information to back that up, but I would say that a lot of them have that sort of strong personality mixed with this capacity for a bit of showmanship, a little bit of hey, look at me kind of energy that they tend to have. They tend to be comfortable in front of crowds, or they develop that comfort later on. Rainbow children and crystal children, they can often be sort of the weird ones in many ways. Like they're just very loving, very open, very receptive and unconditionally loving of all beings. They'll often be more in tune with their surroundings than others. And so the starseed concept is about the soul origin. It's not necessarily about the physical vessel or the avatar's capacity for light or for the pre-incarnative disposition of the auric field. These are choices that are made based on that particular experience that the soul is looking to have. And so the soul, when choosing to incarnate, basically will decide the parents, decide the environment, and decide the pre-incarnative programming that's going to be taking effect on that body, on that vessel. And in that way, they're not really any different from any other soul. It's just that their particular purpose is more of a disruption. So the indigo is there to disrupt. They're there to cause people to go, maybe things aren't quite happening the way that they should happen. And the indigo is the voice of the people at large. But a lot of times the people are a little bit lagged behind, and they're not necessarily totally aware of the different sort of nonsense that they're getting fed. And so the indigo is often there to let people know, hey, this is silly what we're doing right here, or that type of thing. And so all of them are light workers, and all of them will eventually be called to the light. Most of them will have some sort of understanding that they are around for a particular purpose, that they have some sort of thing that they're meant to do, and it feels very grand. It feels world changing, because it is. Collectively, they're part of teams and volunteer waves that came to Earth to help awaken and ascend, to help humanity and the Earth raise in vibration. And they do that automatically just by being there, because they're conduits of light, and they just tend to have a higher capacity for holding that light, and for distributing the light, and for shining their spotlights on injustice in some way. And so that's really what the difference is between them. And an indigo, one of the things about the indigo as well is that there's two forms of indigo. There's an elder indigo and a regular indigo. And the elder indigos tend to have what's called an octarine aura. Octarine is the color of magic. It's the color of the adept. And it can sometimes appear crystalline to in this light spectrum, on this plane of existence. The octarine color is the color of magic, and it doesn't have a place in our visual, in our light spectrum on Earth, in the way that we visualize light. In another dimension, it would look differently, you would see the color. But again, because we don't have a concept of that color, it's hard for me to describe it. But there's elder indigos and octarine indigos, and then there's the regular indigos, and you can't really tell the difference between the two of them. Intuitively, the indigo will eventually understand. And there's also sometimes there's soul shifts that happen as well, where they sort of they'll have new components, or sort of the best way I could describe it is they get passed into this elder status, where they become an elder, and this is something that I think is done to help as they grow and awaken. They receive more information, and they start to become more powerful. They become what's called an adept, and they go through the initiation phase of their energetic control and their self-mastery in that way. Whereas rainbow and crystal children are already very much in control of their energy, though they don't typically realize it. They because they came into the experience with that openness and that receptiveness. It just feels like that's the normal everyday for them, right? So, whereas an indigo has had to open up and has had to learn all these different lessons, and has had to go through all these different sort of experiences in order to see the value in opening themselves up because they're more protected. They're more protective of their energy. They're more protective of the self. When they first start to awaken, these are the people that are often like, they treat their empathy as almost like a disability. These are the people that will be like, oh, I'm highly sensitive. I can't go out in public. I can't do these things. And of course, it's entirely up to them. But these sort of barriers that they put on themselves are illusions. They're constructed out of a fear and a misunderstanding of the capacity that they have for holding light. Ultimately, it's their choice, but it's a superpower, is what it is, really. I mean, it's a superpower. To be able to feel what other people feel is a blessing to have in this place. And it can feel like it's not. And when it first starts to really awaken and you start to really understand, oh, this is why I felt uncomfortable my whole life in these particular situations, because I can feel what other people are feeling to a higher degree than most. Everybody can do this. Everybody that has functioning empathy centers will feel empathy. And sort of it's the what's the word? The potency of the empathy that starts to go up, the accuracy of it, and the openness of the empath, the indigo or the crystal or rainbow child, will determine how much of it they experience. So like, there's been times where I've been like debilitated by people without I don't think I've ever said anything, but there's been a few times in my life where somebody's been going through something traumatic, and more recently, so I was at a funeral, and all the energy in the funeral was so much that it like I couldn't function. I was and I stayed. I didn't move. I didn't go anywhere, but it was just so much energy and so much sadness, so much sadness is the way to put it, that it was like debilitating for me. So I just sat there crying, and it wasn't like that I was upset about the loss of the individual. At that time, I saw that death as a rebirth into the next cycle, and I don't see the negativity to that, the ending of that cycle. Especially in this particular scenario, because it was an elderly member of my family, and we all have particular times that we leave, right, and move on to the next part of the journey, the next part of the path, whatever that looks like for us. But I think that covers pretty much everything. There are probably other terms and different things that we can look at. Ultimately, the goal of all of us is to become crystalline. So a lot of our kids, like my kids are crystals, and I believe in all three cases. One may be an indigo, but I believe that essentially we're sort of the next step of evolution. And as we sort of awaken, we start to understand that we can learn how to deal with these things and learn how to open ourselves up more and take more light in and take more truth in, because that's what it really is. It's taking in the truth of reality, and then integrating that into your being, which can be uncomfortable, because as truth and light comes in, it bubbles up the darkness that's been withheld, that's been sort of held inside of you. And as that comes up, it becomes uncomfortable, because you start to look at stuff that you didn't want to see. And a lot of times the crystals and the rainbow children, they're not gonna develop a lot of shadow. They're seeing things as they are, more or less, and because they're open in most cases and so loving, they're not developing a lot of this shadow. Of course, it totally depends on the environment that they're raised in, everybody has unique challenges, everybody has unique gifts and unique ways of looking at the world as well, and also a unique path that is at their, it's their free will decision to engage in the path, and then how they go about it. So there's not really that much of a difference between them, and all humans, not all humans that are alive right now have the same capacity in the physical body, and that's part of the difference too. Is that the actual physical body of the Indigo and the other sort of different like rainbow children and crystals, etc. They have the fourth ray energy body already activated when they come into incarnation, and this is why they're able to tap into some of the things that they're able to tap into, some of the different capabilities that they have for magic or for some sort of paranormal or psychic type work. It's because they're already stepping into the energy side of things. They're already stepping into being more receptive of vibration, which I talked about earlier. So I hope that clears things up. I hope you guys found that interesting. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about any of that, or if you have anything else to add to that. I always like to hear what people's experiences are. Again, I didn't do a lot of reading on any of this. This is just what came through from my guides. What I'm trying to help show and illustrate here is that it's a part of the evolutionary path of the Earth and the humans on the Earth, and that these changes in the body of subsets of the population are there to evolve. And it's not unlike any other evolution that we've gone through, right? Where we've where bodies have changed or things have changed so that we can be more designed for our environment, right? I think that covers everything. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, click that like button. It really helps with the channel. If you want to see more of the stuff that I make, consider subscribing, and I will see you